So part of what we want to accomplish through our practice is recognizing our own mind's activity and its role in creating our experience. One quote that I've included in the slides is William James, a pioneering American psychologist known for pragmatism. He said that my experience is what I agree to attend to. So in a very real sense, when we start to notice what we are attending to, we're starting to have a window into how we create our own experience. John Milton from Paradise Lost, the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. So this is not, I just want to clarify that this is not the same as cognitive therapy, where we try to correct the thoughts, but we do want to have an awareness of what our thought processes are and how they contribute to the way we react in various situations. And in the slides, I've included a kind of a model that we use to help people understand the role of mindfulness in stress reduction explicitly. And we have two slides. One is what we, how we would envision what we call stress reaction. So this is a somewhat mindless way of experiencing versus the stress, we call it response for just the sake of distinguishing. And in the stress reaction, it's a circular model where something happens out in the world, and then because of what our understanding of that event, it turns into stress inside the body if it's perceived as being threatening to us, right? So when that happens, we perceive a threat, our arousal increases, and the HPA axis, it's called, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands, produce hormones that are designed to get us ready for that threat and to respond to it effectively. This is very useful for coping with an acute crisis situation, but what we know that is if people are continuously aroused, essentially what happens is the system becomes burnt out. We fail to allow our bodies to recuperate and to establish equilibrium. We get dysregulation of our systems of the body and sleep disorders and anxiety, backaches, and so on. The symptoms we all recognize sometimes as being related to too much pressure, stress in our life. Now, when we feel lousy, when we feel badly, sometimes what we do is do something to feel good as soon as possible, and among those things are some that are not so helpful in the long term, and we kind of refer to that as maladaptive coping or self-destructive behaviors like maybe eating too much. We know how soothing it can be to eat comforting food, and so if that's how we respond to feeling badly, that may feel better for a while, but it doesn't really, it's not a really effective response to the challenge in our life. And when we feel badly long enough, there may be other unhelpful things like using alcohol or drugs, things to change the consciousness to take the pressure away. Again, these do not add to our capacity for really managing difficult experiences very well. They escape for a while from the immediate awareness of what's happening, but it's not a lasting solution. And eventually all these things together can cause a breakdown of our body's well-being physiologically. So what's the alternative to that, and how does mindfulness offer an alternative? Well, from the very start of the events happening in our life out in the world, mindfulness can often give a broader context for understanding that experience, so that first of all it may not seem as threatening when we bring that broader context to it. We can also be aware if we're tending to evaluate that experience in ways that we know are not helpful. If we're not aware, if we're not mindful, that happens automatically, and we're immediately into that reaction phase. You know how maybe when you're driving in traffic and you're on edge because the traffic is terrible, and then someone cuts in your lane, the response is immediate. I think we all can recognize that experience and realize with a sense of distance from it that it's not the end of the world that that person did that, that, the sun will continue to rise and fall. And this may seem trivial when compared to cancer, but it's illustrative, I think, of this idea that being able to be aware as the process unfolds allows us some options. We may have even cut someone else off in traffic at one point or another and understand that it may not have been intentional. It might have been out of confusion or various other reasons for that happening. So just one thing is the mindfulness can make us aware of the perception and appraisal of the event. It also allows us to notice that we're becoming tense and our muscles are tightening up, so we can apply the tools of physiological relaxation that we develop and learn through our practices, our yoga and so forth. We can use strategies of calming ourselves that we practice and learn in the class, and as a result, we're less likely to be so reactive. Now, over time, these processes can become almost automatic and self-sustaining, so that if you're chronically stressed, you may have no respite and the body has no chance to recover. So mindfulness really is a window into our own body and our own mind that allows us to apply wisdom at the various points in the process of stress. One thing we talk about in the class also is attitudes that are conducive to mindfulness. Just briefly, some of them are non-judging. Now, if I asked you to pay attention to your own mind's activity over, say, a 10-minute period, I think you would be amazed at how many times within that short period the mind is engaged in evaluative activity, saying, oh, that's nice, that's unpleasant, that's the way it should be, that's not the way it should be, that person should do that or should not do that. This judging kind of mentality is very active in us, and it's part of the problem is it becomes so automatic. We get lost in the reaction before we have a chance to consider fully. Patience, realizing things have a pace of unfolding that can't be altered, and if we can accept that, we're less likely to be work ourselves up wanting it to be different than it is. The idea of the beginner's mind. Trust. I'm just going to articulate these words and just let them resonate for a minute. Non-striving. Sometimes we make the distinction between human doing and human being. Many of the patients I work with recognize that they've been working on overdrive for many years, that they don't even know how to stop and just be. And so we practice that, letting go, letting the body and mind truly rest, letting go of agendas, acceptance, coming to be able to come to the world and our experience as they are, instead of, avoiding or limiting our exposure. We know that life has its beauties and its joys and also its losses and suffering. It's the pain of loss and so on is ubiquitous in life, and very often, with the support of the culture, I think we're a very culture that often denies the hardship of life, and mindfulness invites us to develop a way of coming into the fullness of this life experience, the ups and downs, and be able to be with it, to be present instead of escaping from our life as it is.